Because on that note, go.
Oh, well, balance is something we apparently used to have, and then everything changed when a certain trademarked nation attacked. But yeah, I I wanted to ask you because you're gonna have good answers to this, or you'll have good bullshit. Either way. Um, is the universe as a whole, do you feel that the universe is a balanced organism, mechanism, whatever you want to call it? Is it
Ooh,
balanced?
yeah, this relates to the once you mentioned it, me pondering stuff because I feel like the funda element of the universe is chaos. We just see order imposed on it. So how does that relate to balance? I guess if you drill down in my beliefs, yes, it is fundamentally balanced because if it wasn't, uh, it would not exist from a metaphysical standpoint, right? But the concept is if it was too much or too little, it wouldn't. But that's kind of post facto reasoning where it's like, I don't know, what is too much, what is too little.
And that's just it. Is I feel like we confuse. So you know me, I'm big on words. I'm big on like the meaning of actual like words that seem similar but are different.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like humans, we mostly associate balance with equilibrium, which are slightly different, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd say that's.
Like like all equilibrium is balanced, but not all balance is an equilibrium.
I don't know if an equilibrium is a balance. It's closer to like homeostasis, right? It's a balancing, not a
Mhm.
balance. So it's inaction because the trouble with the term balance as a noun is it's
Mhm.
like it's the like concept of perfect. Like nothing is balanced. It's in the process of balancing.
Yeah, yeah. Because as soon as like this is kind of a Taoist and Zen and Buddhist in that realm of thought uh, philosophy of as soon as something is actually balanced, it ceases to be, which is a good thing in that kind of sphere because it joins the whole.
Mhm.
Because Taoists are all about like they're one of the sayings is you must return to the uncarved block, you know, because we take our block of marble, of granite, whatever, and start chipping away into this perfect thing that we want. It's like, well, it was perfect when it was whole.
Well, do you know what sound a sine wave makes when it's perfectly balanced at the same time?
Yes.
Nothing.
Right.
Silence.
Yeah.
Silence. The only thing that's perfectly balanced and perfect in any way is silence.
Right. And true silence freaks us out. Like there's that one room.
Mhm.
Uh,
This isn't even true silence. It's just close enough.
yeah, because there is nothing that we can't experience true silence because our biological mechanisms make noise, so we can't ever really, really experience true silence. Even if you're deaf, because silence or sound is the wave. You can actually feel. You can feel sound. We've all felt it.
Mhm.
Fireworks are a good example. Um,
Bass.
right. So like you might not always be able to hear the experience of sound, but you can always feel it. But I'm starting to go on a tangent. So like that's just it. I've been racking my brain about okay, well, is there such a thing as balance, or is it a constant tug of war? Is it constant change? Like this is we're getting into the what the symbol of the yin yang is, essentially.
Yeah, and the trouble with that is there's the unfortunate how would you put association that there's an an equal factor, I guess, that the to and fro matches, but that just doesn't translate into reality.
I suppose, although we should really ask a physicist about this too, because physics is the physical manifestation of things trying to balance, essentially.
This is where my theory that like the underlying principle is chaos, because like when you look at physics, it's like if its immediate response was to be perfectly balanced, perfectly harmonious, it would immediately have balanced out and ceased to exist. So there has to be a chaotic factor that is interwoven into it that made it not do that to begin with.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, I completely agree. And we have our own concept of time, and we can't possibly like conceptualize all of time and space and how it all intermingles and how things react to one another in the cosmic sphere. We can on a mathematical level, but on an experiential level, it's impossible for humans. So it's
But with the yin and yang thing, though, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is you hear people talking about balance in terms of karma a lot. And then most people don't understand, they understand karma about as much as they understand yoga.
at least in the US. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
If a true Indian yogi heard us talking about it, he'd just be like, oh.
Yeah, turns out most yoga is not hatha yoga. It's not poses.
No, it's a lot of breathing and a lot of either not thinking or thinking a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, the poses are just meant to. It's funny, the true Indian yoga, to my understanding, I'm just a cis white dude in America, right? I don't, you know.
Okay. Okay, here we go.
But to my understanding, most yoga is the poses that we all practice are not for flexibility. They're not for, building strength necessarily. They're meant to put you in sort of uncomfortable places so that you mentally can challenge it and live with it.
The the point, uh, Raja Yoga is my favorite, the royal yoga. But most of them like talk about the positions, and the point is that it should be uncomfortable when you start, but something that you can hold for hours. And it's very similar to the old tale that like monks would, when they first got to the temple, be told to meditate under a bell that was being rung. Like the point is to give your mind something to ignore rather than thoughts, so you get used to that, ignoring the body and ignoring the stimulus.
Sure, yeah. So that's where the waterfall thing comes from. Yeah.
Yep.
Fun.
Because it turns out it's easier to ignore physical discomfort than it is to ignore chattering thoughts.
That says a lot. Which should like put us to more it should put us as humans in a more empathetic bent towards those with, those kinds of neurological disabilities or just brain stuff. Schizophrenics deserve a lot of empathy because they are in danger of their chattering, it's a whole thing. And that's to put it lightly. I don't understand schizophrenia fully because we don't understand schizophrenia fully. It's a whole thing. But that's kind of beside the point. So yeah, so that's
and away we go.
yeah. Well, so that's the whole thing. Like it's just so interesting where we like the finding of balance is always a journey, right? Or it's always a give and take. There's always some push-pull relation to it. Either it's hard fought for or it is settled into one or the other, and usually in a circular fashion, one and the other. And then we have stuff like, so people talk about the human race is headed towards a higher, a higher self, a higher way of existing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that very interesting as a I'm not a psychologist, as a psychology nerd.
Enthusiast.
Yes, I am an enthusiast, yeah. And one who tries to practice things I learn, put it into my life. We tend to forget or ignore or even glorify some of the outliers of human existence. So people with neurological disabilities or physical disabilities or what have you, lower IQs, all that, like even too high of IQs, because too much logic can destroy your.
We love our freaks, the good ones and the bad ones. Well, we hate the bad ones, we love the good ones, but it's the freaks that interest us.
And then, and we just had 2 videos on what's good and what's bad, and we came to no conclusions whatsoever. But that's part of the point. So it is a lot of subjectivity. But yeah, I just don't know. Is it too neurotypical, not to use kind of a well-rung term at this point, but is it too neurotypical to think of that sort of evolution in an act of journeying to balance?
No, so in the sci-fi I was working on, I tried to do that, right? Like the concept was to maintain the diversity, but how would that look if it was balanced? I'm not crazy about the fact that it relates to multipolarity, which is something I think there's problems with, but that multipolarity creates problems in the story. So I mean, I address that anyways. But the concept is actually part of the principles of the thelemic philosophy, which is capsulized. I don't know why that's the word that my mind went with, but like brought together in the term every man and woman is a star. And the idea is that there's a balance, using the term in its more loose and abstract thing, where everyone has an orbit. So if everybody like gets in tune with what they're supposed to be doing, their place in the universe, they're given skill sets, they accepting other conditions, you won't have the same friction. Now there'll be, whatever, not perfect peace, right? Because that'd be silence, but it'll be a humming, right? It'll be a song rather than noise or destruction. So there's the theory that there's a way to do that. And it's not impossible, but it's definitely idealistic and borderline utopian.
Yeah. To bring that home, I mean, I had those kinds of thoughts mostly in undergrad as a music student, and focusing really hard on the philosophy of music and very niche, specifically the philosophy of tuning with your peers, of being in tune. Because if you play everything in tune, the waves mathematically will match up in a way that will, I talk about it with my students about, if you're in tune and you lock in with one another like that, it's like shining a light through a multifaceted crystal. It will, if you get just the right angle in that crystal with the light, the whole thing just shing, just lights up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what sound does. It opens literally into infinity. Like, we can't perceive that because we are but flesh. But that's what happens. Our perception is but flesh right now. Yes.
Not doing the right yoga.
It's true. I'm not doing any yoga, and my back is yelling at me for it. Oh, I've entered my 30s.
But no, so this is why'd you pick this word? Because we run into the same problem. Is that balance that creates that, or we just keep using this like catch-all word like love, where it's like, oh, that's balance? Because we mean by balance we mean harmony and equilibrium, but those are different things.
They are. Exactly. That's why I'm so big on using the right words at the right time. And no, I don't know if that's balance, but it is at least, I feel like harmony is a sense of balance. It's a balance.
Can we try and dig into what
without balance? Like, so here's the thing with like the opposite of harmony would be, an opposite of harmony could be dissonance, where it sounds clashing. You can balance those if you'd like to, if you want a certain frequency of clash.
The whole point of dubstep.
Right. Yeah. Dubstep and a lot of like modern classical type stuff. But yeah, it's the whole thing. So does it just fall under the subjective experience? Because I don't want to think that.
Okay,
I
what
feel like there is a way of balance, like for real.
what is balance? Let's actually just try and dig into the word. Like,
Yeah. Well, I've been,
is it
yeah, it's a big question.
because if it's equals, which I see, I think people just misuse balance. I feel like it has to be equals, right? Right. We're gonna do outsourcing. I have so many tabs up. Okay, let's see what the actual definition is and see a state of equilibrium or equipose, equipose, equal distribution of weight. So it's both. Oh, that doesn't help at all.
Doesn't
A
it? Doesn't.
habit of calm behavior and judgment. So it is all. It is a catch-all word.
Right.
So it is abstract. Yeah. Instrument for weighing mental and emotional steadiness, the relation in psychology between the intake and like. So it is. It is actually a catch-all word. Maybe
Okay.
that's.
So let's look at the accounting term of balance. So that is, does what's going in equal what's coming out, or vice versa? Like, does it zero out?
Because that's the simplest way, and that makes sense. It's when the moment you do like. All right, so we'll do the mental, emotional thing, right? So it's like a steadiness. So you can make an argument that like balance is bad for creativity, right? But
Yeah.
if you're
There's a poem, I wish I remember. It's been years since I've read this poem, but it was posted on my teacher's door. But it calls the artist's, state, what is it? The state of like divine dissatisfaction.
well,
Because they
yes,
feel the need to address and change and do all these things. So if like someone who is at peace isn't going to get anything done. That's why the Taoists are always portrayed as like lazy layabouts, like who just get
Mhm.
drunk all the time. Because they are balanced, they're at peace, so they don't feel the need to change.
It is what it is.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a whole thing. And they're very much like and that's just it. There's a story of there's like a contest between the Confucians and the Taoists in the emperor's temple. It's like, okay, you guys get this wall, paint me an awesome mural. You guys get this wall, paint me an awesome mural. We will put up a giant curtain in between so no one can cheat. And the Confucians, did all this stuff and painted this awesome mural. The Taoists pretty much drank wine all day and polished the wall with their rags. And then when the curtain was taken down, Confucians, wow, that's awesome. Rah, rah, rah. Look at the Taoists. The reflection of that is like, whoa. It's like,
Although they both have, this is one of the funny things about watching Westerners, especially Americans. Well, I guess technically, specifically Americans, that are into things like Zen and Confucianism and Taoism. It's like, oh, like there's got to be more to life. You missed the whole fucking point. Confucianism is do your job and be happy. Taoism is be happy.
yep. Taoism is there really is no job, so just be happy. Yeah.
Yeah, just live. Are you breathing? Yeah. Okay. Well, then that's fine.
Yeah. Are
Like,
you
what
really?
about
Yeah.
what about my home? You
Home
have
is
one
where
or
you
you
take your
don't.
shits. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's just it. It's like, so we are referring to a catch-all word, but it's good to discuss because even if we get frustrated, at least it needs to be talked about, right? Because a lot of the time people switch track with their conversations, which means I'm talking about something and I mean it a certain way, and that's why I'm talking about it, and you're perceiving it a different way, and that's how you're talking about it. So it's like two ships in the night.
I think the balance of trouble is less that people aren't in agreement on what they mean. They're just using it incompletely. So my example for that would be, this is why I brought up the karma thing, but also why the yin and yang is important, because the concept would be the more good you do in the world, the more evil you create, right? Like that would be the premise. And nobody talks about that if the world has this quote unquote balancing factor, the true yin and yang, the better you make the world, the more wicked the wicked become, right? To try and pull it back.
You know who talks about that more than anyone else? Cartoons.
Who?
I remember cartoons do this. The Jackie Chan Adventures, that cartoon show. I don't know if you ever watched it. It was one of my favorites.
Nope.
So featured Jackie Chan and his niece Jade and uncle, who's just called Uncle. And they were the first season or series is them working with a CIA type secret agency to work against a criminal organization trying to find magic talismans, these like little stone talismans with depictions of all 12 the Chinese zodiac signs. And they each had different powers. You know, the horse could heal people, the dragon shot lasers, all that kind of stuff. If all the talismans were given to this like statue, it's a sealed demon. So then the demon is released and has all these powers and tries to take over the world. You know, the usual stuff. Yeah. So eventually, as you might imagine, towards the end of the show, you know, after many, you know, heists and misadventures and all that stuff, the bad guys do somehow steal all of them and release the demon. And this demon awakens and all that. So the demon gets defeated because that's what happens in cartoon shows. An uncle, who is like the sage archetype, you know, Jackie's like, yeah, we did it. We destroyed. They didn't steal it again. We destroyed the demon. And Uncle like smacks him. What'd you do that for? Because he's like, now you've left a void for a greater evil. Like it's very, and there is a greater evil, and it has to do with the I Ching and the different symbols of the I Ching and all that. So it goes into more. Yeah, it's a lot.
Saving that study for myself.
Yeah, it's a good one. But that silly cartoon show like really had a lot of. It was a really Taoist show. Like now that I'm thinking about it.
What? No, Jackie Chan, the
right.
Chinese enthusiast who brought in Chinese culture.
Right. Kung Fu master Jackie Chan, what? Yeah. But man, like, how true is it? We do good, and Star Wars is just chock full of this shit. Like, Star Wars is 100% about this, and this is not a new idea. This is a TikTok I saw the other day. Like, Star Wars is 100% about the Force is just balanced. It doesn't care what the Jedi and the Sith are up to, as long as both kind of exist. Like, so you see it this like throughout Star Wars lore and history. Like the Jedi have a golden age, and the Sith have a like golden age, and the Emperor like makes his palace out of the Jedi temple, and then Jedi come back. Like it's this whole like constant one-upping rise and fall of each other.
One of my favorite tropes is the Batman trope, right? Like there's criminals, but then there's a superhero, and because of the superhero, there becomes supervillains.
Yep. Heck yeah, Batman creates most of his villains, doesn't he?
If it doesn't create them, it's people being like, I didn't know I could do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the premise, right? That's one of the reasons people hate them is like they had just regular criminals and now they got super fucking freaks.
Yep. That's the whole thing. My goodness.
But my point is that like people talk about balance, like they'll have like the yin and yang and all the chakra stuff and mandalas and sacred geometry, and they're like, yeah, balance, all good. No, that's not how it works. Now, we did talk about in good that technically you could have all good and that be sufficient, right? Because if everything has to be good, right, then that's balance, right? And that would be where you could say that, well, yes, the universe is balanced because the universe is indifferent. So it all is good to the universe. What is it doing? It's doing. Doing is all it's trying to do, so it's doing good. Like that's real heavy meta philosophy can be simplified as is, which is really boring for people. But it takes you a long time to get there and understand it.
Right. And then learn to like, You start to understand it, then you start to like, you have to try and hear the music of that and start to dance to it. But that takes a lot of self-reflection. That's
Well, and then it becomes the realization of the mundane. It's my all-time favorite philosophy quote, which is the book I'm working on. Is a rough thing to say, but it's I'll use the actual translation. So before man studies Zen, it is dung. While man studies Zen, it is gold. And when he masters Zen, it is dung.
it's true. It's true. I know. I still think of this saxophone quartet that came to school. You know this one, yeah.
I quoted it to somebody about art because he was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you have this abstract art and stuff like that." I was like, "Well, it's like, did you see it? You got it."
And you got it, yeah. So for those listening, hopefully someone's listening. In music school, a saxophone quartet came to my school and performed for us, did a little master class, talked about the pieces they were playing. They played one that was quite avant-garde. And I'm into that stuff. I don't perform that stuff, but I'm intellectually into that stuff at least. And it was very interesting. So they performed it and we clapped. And one of the students during the Q&A portion, just kind of the typical, like, I don't get it kind of student. And one of the saxophones just kind of leans over in his chair. He's like, did you hear it? Well, yeah. Then you got it.
Gold. Absolutely.
It is. That was like a profoundly Zen statement. And I'm sure he didn't like mean it that way, but although, I mean, musicians are.
Yes, he did. As a true jazz person, because same thing with jazz, right? Like you get jazz. It's one of your big hang-ups on music, right? Because we were like, oh, jazz. And this guy's in freaking tweed and glasses.
If it's not bebop, it's not jazz. Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and they're talking jazz where there's somebody out there just, no, you live it, man. Jazz is.
Yep, that's real. That's a real thing. So yeah, most people want to. Yeah,
back to the same concept, right? When people talk balance, they're typically not talking about balance, right? They're talking about ideal.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people equate that, well, balance would be ideal, but then they try and take out a portion of the balance.
It is funny how that works. And I think it is because our brains, like, we're not, it's so strange. We're evolutionarily designed to find abundance. We don't want to worry. So our balance is not balanced. Like our personal balance usually isn't balanced in the environmental sense.
Are you saying you have to work to be satisfied with what you have? What? No, there's certainly no one's written a book on this.
I'm saying that being satisfied with what you have, unless you are a very special person, like you just have a good mentality throughout all your fucking life, to be satisfied is a choice. And usually it's a hard choice. Like you have to come to that choice. That's why these philosophies exist.
Making it. One of the things that
yes
I like to appreciate as I've gotten older is you have to keep making, like, a decision is a choice you keep making the same way.
Yeah, truly. I talked about that in one of my TikToks, was the samurai thing about being obsessed with death, right? And I'm actually reading right now. Oh, where is it?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. This book is, how old are you? Hagakure is Hidden Leaves. And it's what, there it is, written in
17.
It is the 1600s.
Ah, close.
Yeah. So this book was written in the 1600s. And it is a like manual, essentially, with parables. It's a manual on a samurai's thought process and how they should go through life and think about it. And honestly, it's, don't think too much about it. Like,
right. to be fair, is this late samurai that were already romanticizing themselves, or is this like part of the samurai movement?
That's a good question. It is written about the older ones by a newer one,
So it's romanticized.
kind of against the romanticized.
Oh,
So he talks earlier on in the book about like our job is to kill people for our boss. Like that's like he kind of cuts away all the crap. It's like let the Buddhist monks worry about finding inner peace. That's their job. Your job is to be really good at killing people.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's real samurai shit.
Yeah, that's his whole thing. And I'm actually going to do a video. I'm trying to find. I just got this in the mail today. I was waiting for it. I listened to the audiobook version, but I really want to. It's important to read these kinds of things because you can sit and ruminate on it rather than he said the sentence and now he's moving on.
Mhm.
I'm not good at hitting pause on audiobooks. But there's a portion in here about you know, they kind of poo-poo a little bit on the martial artists because it's like, well, that's not it's not art. It's it's a skill for sure. It's not an art. And it's a mindset. It's not, creating and doing all this kind of stuff. It is hone your skills, harden yourself, be the type of person you need to be, not about like achieving, because artists achieve things. Artists make things, they achieve things, they react to things. Samurai, they are a type of person. They don't care about achieving things. They care about being a thing.
Right.
So that's the
Which,
whole.
yeah, that's one of those. The education system stuff makes me so sad because like that's something that should be taught. Like philosophy should be taught probably starting in middle school, light philosophy, but at least like that type,
Questions, right?
or at least that kind of concept where it's like, don't try to do so, like don't try to achieve this thing. Try to be the person who achieves. Because it doesn't matter what you achieve. Like stop focusing on what's out there and make the machine just produce the results.
Right. So that's where the thing about death comes from. Like they were always ready to commit suicide, essentially, because so they lived as one already dead, because your death doesn't matter if you are who you need to be already. Like you've already achieved, kind of hypocritical, but you've already achieved that. So you can die now, like, so don't fucking worry about it. Worry about just maintaining your like internal reputation, essentially.
One of my other favorite quotes of all time from a TV show, the Sherlock Holmes BBC one, Moriarty. When you first get to meet him, he's talking about all his plans and stuff. And Sherlock's like, well, people are going to die. And he just leans right in his face. And that's what people do. Like,
Yep. Oh, yeah. That is a good one. Yes. With Benito Cumbersnatch.
oh God, I watched that. They're movies. And I watched all of them so many times.
Yep. Yeah. They're quite good. They're well acted, well produced. Their writing is really good. They make you think about stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Perfect.
Absolutely perfect. His brother Mycroft, just awesome. Absolutely. But yeah, and the other just it's all about balance. Isn't you can make it much harder than it needs to be. Like most things, you can make it way more complicated if you want to. We tend to do that because like you said, especially Americans, we tend to follow the path of, well, it can't be that easy. It can't be that simple.
Yeah, that's simple. Because that's the thing is you can't make something balance. You find balance. That's the difference. And even still, the woo-woo types will talk about that, right? With their happy bliss zen. And it's like if you're still talking to people, you haven't reached that level because you wouldn't even bother. But
the notion of the Dalai Lama is interesting to me. because that is an enlightened Buddha who is reincarnated, who chooses to keep reincarnating rather than enter nirvana. Like chooses to keep reincarnating in order to spread Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah, but he should, if he was a real Buddha, he would see the lack of wisdom in that decision. So I'm calling champ. I said what I
Now,
said.
granted, like, as far as major world religions go, that's probably one of the lesser like damaging ones to the overall human psyche.
Well,
But
yeah.
So I don't want to poo-poo on it too much, but at the same time, it's like,
I guess to be fair, I haven't watched enough of the Dalai Lama to see how sad he is. Because a person that's actually doing that would be very, very sad.
yeah. And he does balance it. His whole thing is, love and joy and humor and that kind of stuff. So,
But that only comes from a place of absolute pain.
yeah, all the best comedians, all the best actors usually have that.
All the best philosophers, all the enlightened ones. It doesn't come from, there's just, so maybe the Dalai Lama is like reincarnated, but then you get the Western type of people being like, yes, happiness, joy, bliss. It's like, but that's not where he's coming from for
Right.
that. What he does is, in theory, if you're enlightened, what you've done is you've pierced the dark, right? It's not looking away from the dark and being like, oh, look at the pretty light. No, you go into the dark and then you make a light in it, but you have to feel that pressure against the dark, which makes you really, to use the abject term, very sad. It's a very sad experience.
Yes, it is. It is. It's and that's the Buddhist story, right? The long time, I forget exactly how long, but the meditation under the banyan tree was, he was pretty much accosted by the demons of life and the world and all that kind of stuff. And they, like, in the story, the demons are manifested. So, it's much more good storytelling. But that's kind of part of that story, is he took the whole like darkness bit and was able to cut through it eventually, pierce through it.
That's the difference, right? Is somebody who just doesn't want pain is jumping around like, yes, love, happiness, and joy, where the enlightened one's like, just love each other.
Right. Pretty much. Oh my goodness. Yep. It's that crazy old person in the horror movie. The crazy old man, don't go in the woods at night. Don't go in the woods at night. They're going to go in the woods at night.
Mhm.
Because horror movies would end after 10 minutes if they just listened to the person telling them not to do the thing.
Which, all right, so looping back to balance
Mhm.
as a direct thing, because that's, I don't, the human species, the human thing as a large societal organism, I don't think can achieve balance. I don't think it will. I don't think it will. Not that it can't, not, but
That's one thing that I agree. And you can finish your thought, but that's one thing that I had noticed. Go ahead.
because then you can't have innovation or art.
Yeah, if everyone's satisfied, there's no need to do that kind of stuff. That's partially why, historically speaking, I have two things. In a lot of the philosophies, I think a lot of the Greek ones too, Western philosophies, but you can correct me on this, you know more about those than I do. They always seem to talk about, for lack of a better term, the good old days. The sages, the ancients knew this, and we're trying to find it again. It's like, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. I think we create this mythology of the elders knowing and being more content, and we've lost that somehow, and we're trying to find it again, which is a common trope in storytelling. Ancient civilizations that were technologically advanced, all that kind of stuff.
A specific story that I'm not, people who know will know what it is, but that the whole point is that humanity lost something, but the point isn't that it's actually lost. The point is the finding of it. So it's accepting that humanity feels at least like it lost something, real or not real, but that there is a thing to find.
Sure.
And
So
even if not real, the pursuit of it is worthwhile.
Yeah. So is that, with that in mind, is that sorry, I'm gonna have to clip this part because I'm gathering my thoughts. But is that kind of a lost metaphor? You know, because like take the Bible for instance. There's a lot of metaphor in the Bible that in modern times we take as literal when we shouldn't, because we're losing the lesson. Is the like the ancients knew something we don't? Is that one of those like common metaphors that everyone was like, oh yeah,
Yes.
so it's about the
Yeah,
finding of the
because
thing? Yeah.
the concept, so using like the Greek mystery schools or even the Egyptian ones, although we don't really have the records of those ones in the same way. But it's the ancients represent some kind of like connection to the primordial thing, which is Plato kind of touches on it with this concept of ideas, right? Where there's these things that exist that you can grab onto. And what the trouble is, it's gotten distorted down into reality and into now. But also it's part of the story is that it can be done, right? So if we're trying to achieve a perfect thing, but it's like, well, we don't have any examples of that, you create an example to be like, well, it has been done. Now, whether that's true or not, it at least gives you the hope necessary to be like, well, they did it, we can, versus just being like, well, it's never been done before, but we'll be the first.
That's, yeah, and there's scientific evidence now of that, like the oh god, what is it, 6-minute mile or something like that, the 4-minute mile maybe. It's a low number, like the mile's never been run in this amount of time, and then someone did it, and then suddenly, yeah, everyone can do it. Yeah, so there is a lot of basis for that. So I like that. I do.
Which that would be a credit to the ancients that had ancients they were talking about were pretty smart.
Yeah. But the thing is, a lot of places that talk about that have the notion, either in their mythology or they try to make it work historically, are descended from the gods themselves. So like one could argue that they were trying to refer to that all the way back.
Right. But that's where you get the concept of the gods for these primordial things, right? So what you're trying to do is link that humanity is a descendancy that can lead back to an ascendancy. That we're connected somehow to the ethereal. And when we first came down, we had a very clear connection to it. And then we moved away from that. The ancient aliens theory makes more sense if that's true versus people just becoming enlightened in an Atlantean sense. But for me, it's the only example I've ever seen, and to be fair, I keep busy, so I don't engage in stories as much as I would like to, but Star Trek is the closest I've ever seen to this balance, this ideal, this utopia.
And even then, every episode, more or less, is about fighting in a way to maintain it, to make the decision of balance.
Right.
They're tested constantly by new information, essentially.
Well, and what they do is the point is that they unify it towards a direction, right? So it isn't, and not even that, it has the same type of thing where if you want to be criminals, there's a criminal planet, right? Like there's a sector where you can go play criminal. You don't leave that sector because these people want peace, right? So you give everybody their piece of the pie. It almost seems like we have to be intergalactic for it to work. In my vision, humanity just got fed up and became city states, right? So it's like we're all here, but we all agree that we want peace. But then everybody who has a certain belief system just lives in a country state that has that single belief system. They don't impose it on other people. People are free to leave, people are free to come, because the technology is such that any one of these city states can support any population level. But people just kind of fuck off and mind their own business and let everybody else do the same. But because you can't get the homogeny. And it's one of the troubles with the like pure utopian concept. If it's a homogenous human population, that just doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of villains in a lot of stories try to do that.
Mhm.
You know, so we know that's bad, or at least not the ideal,
Mhm.
because it gives up. It's this weird thing. It's the balance, right, of peace with individuality still intact, because to give up our individuality is, a sacrifice most people are unwilling to make, and I don't think it's possible. That's also a trope, is someone who's tried to like kill their inner self, not in a Zen way, but like just be bland and just exist.
Mhm.
Or I'm watching a lot of Naruto, so like uh the Foundation is a place where they train ninjas to just, you exist as a shinobi. You are not a person. You have no name. You have no identity. You are a ninja. This is what you do. And then
Now,
that mask breaks really easily, right? As soon as they meet someone with personality, the main character, because that's how shonen works. But
however, I do think we need more of that in the world. More, and maybe we're getting past nationalism, because it used to be, I'm an American, which allowed tons of different types of people. And we might have one more good revival of that left, where nations can, in a diverse way, recognize the nation states, and their patriotism as I'm an American and like that type of thing. For America, because we were a country built on ideals and not monarchies. That's the big difference.
quite
Or
decidedly not of monarchies. Yeah.
yeah, we were the first big one to do that. You can be like, I'm an American, and then attach that to like a set of morals and ethics and ideals or whatever. But I think even if you do extreme individualism, this is back to the thelemic concept of every man and woman's a star. The concept is everybody is that then. So what you do is you equalize the game. It's like, I'm just, a star on my orbit, you're a star on your orbit. So we're all in this game together. But you need something that, how would you put, dissolves the ego, right? It doesn't make the ego the face or the driver, right? You got to take the ego out of the driver's seat. The ego is a tool of the mind, not
all it takes is a narcissist or the wrong kind of capitalist to start to manipulate that system for their gain, like, and that throws it out of whack, throws it out of balance.
Mhm.
So it does take, and then the question is, well, how do you do that? And that's where a lot of issues come up, because like narcissism is a brain disorder. Like, how do you can't, like,
it's hard to deal with post facto, right? Because this is most places, like when you look at China, the way they deal with it is their culture is just very strong as a culture. So you don't get that type of thing because the way that their brains function, right, is based on the cultural programming that they're Chinese, and it's about being Chinese, and China. It's about China. It's somebody on the other side of the country. They're all part of this big project that's China. The experiment of America and one of the risks involved was that over individualism, which was meant to be balanced by the American patriotism. But this is where, like, I don't know, the KGB talked a lot about getting rid of that. And it seems whether it was the KGB or just a natural evolution of the experiment, that seems to be happening, and we're seeing the problem with that.
And honestly, I mean, that's both, right? It will naturally happen given enough people and enough time, but also other countries who will have ill wishes or want to sway this country a certain way will, it's easy to add food coloring to that water, like just to start adding stuff.
It's a pretty blaring weakness. When when things were strong, it was fine. But the moment there was a chink in the armor, it was easy to get something in there.
Mhm.
But to like expand on it, because this is something I've thought about a lot, and it doesn't work, and I don't know why. But people try and pitch we'll just do the human thing, right? Like we're all human, like we're focused on the human thing. But that doesn't work. It's for whatever reason, the narrative mechanism of we're all human just doesn't hold. It doesn't have that gripping sense of identity.
Yeah, it's because we have to do a lot of, I don't know how to put this necessarily, but the whole we are human thing is correct and right to do, in my opinion. We historically have a lot to unpack with the fact that we haven't shut the fuck up about race and differences. You know, we focus on differences like a lot, mostly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like it's hard to stop doing that. There's a lot of momentum behind doing that. So it's a lot of like I used to think Morgan Freeman, the actor Morgan Freeman, has he says something about it's like if you want to end racism, stop talking about it. And I used to be like, well, no, you have to like it has to be addressed. We have to talk about it. And the more I like see what's going on, like it would die in 2 generations if we just shut the fuck up for a second.
Mhm.
Like it would absolutely just go away in 2 generations if
Well, and then address the real issues, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, it's the equation is black people are poor. Just take out the black people part. There's people that are poor. Fix that.
that's it.
Like they take out that whole other part. Doesn't even need to be part of the equation because whoever's poor will just make them not poor anymore.
And there are people who exploit like it's fucked up to think about it, but it's important to think about. And I'm going against Morgan Freeman's own advice right now, but slavery was not that long ago.
Mhm.
Slavery was not that long ago where white Americans just saw black Americans as not, you know, they're
Well,
not
and
us. Yeah,
well, and there's all the like the thing is like it's I hate having to. I've seen a lot of memes making fun of centrist, and they're valid memes. But to play the centrist card, it's like, yeah, there's systemic problems, but the problems aren't race problems anymore. They're systemic. You're making it. It's systemic racism. No, 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 no. It's a systemic problem. It was originally addressed that way, but that's not part of the equation anymore. So we just need to address the systemic parts of it because whoever's been disenfranchised and disadvantaged by it, if we just fix that by targeting again, like the disenfranchised, the poor, people in bad neighborhoods, like equal opportunity, if we just address the actual issues
the stuff Jesus
disproportionately,
actually told us to do that we never do. Yeah,
but it's like it disproportionately, it will benefit that group, right? But you don't have to make it about that because you want to make it a system where if it could be anybody. Um, in my humble opinion, that seems to be. But again, it's like recognizing the history. It's like, oh well, it's over. It's not an issue anymore. It's like, well, no, there's people that have issues because that existed. Yes, like saying that's not a thing is just silly.
Right.
But saying that it's still a problem the same way it was, then you're not talking about how to solve the actual problem because you're not bringing it to how it is in a modern situation, in a modern
Sure.
context.
Sure. And I would, that could even be argued that if you say it like that, no progress has actually been made ever. And that's not true.
Mhm.
Like,
But there's people that make that argument. So let's be clear that there are things where it's like, no, 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 it just got more subtle and sinister, but it's the same level, just they got better at hiding it. Which, if true, I would have the same sentiment of that as I do with like the global elite conspiracy, where it's like, oh, they're all planning and plotting, and every little thing is them. It's like if they're that powerful, right? They're that in control. They're that well organized as humans. You're screwed.
yeah, I think it's more of a collective unconscious, like a Jungian. It's more of a Jungian thing, a dark Jungian thing,
Mhm.
like that exists in certain people of certain levels, all that kind of stuff. Plus, I definitely subscribe to the fact that wealth, having money and power, doesn't corrupt you necessarily. It makes you more of who you already are.
Right.
It allows you to be, it allows you to flourish in whichever direction you kind of already are. So
Mhm.
very few people have redemption arcs. If you're an asshole, you're going to be an asshole with money. You know,
Yeah.
if you're an angel, yeah, right. If you're an angel, you're going to be an angel with money. Like it's
Mhm.
just, yeah. So, and then the question, if we can bring it back to balance, like, does that balance itself? Like, because it's not like rich people are like fighting each other like villains and heroes, you know, like, oh,
Mhm.
BP, like, I'm going to dump all this toxic waste into Lake Winnebago. And then you have someone else like, we're going to clean Lake Winnebago. I guess it does
Yeah.
work that way.
But no, because either um either that's not how it works as far as like there's just not people doing it, or the people that are doing the bad things are making more money, so it doesn't equal out, right? It doesn't balance. The villains have more to cause more damage than the good guys can, because it
Right.
turns out it's easier to make money when you're willing to do bad things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is. It's tough.
But see that then begs the question when it comes to like the karma stuff, right? Where it's like I understand the sentiment of wanting to be like, well, that there has to be a bug, right? There has to be a flaw, or there has to be some way to compensate for the fact that people that do bad things win in that kind of way, right? And that's
Karma. So here's the thing with karma. It doesn't work like a slingshot or something. It's not karma is not a boomerang. It's a piggy bank. Right? So karma isn't like I do a bad thing and eventually comes back and smacks you in the face. No. If you're a shithead, you just keep getting reborn. Like karma is all about putting coins in the piggy bank of rebirth. That's it. Like so if you're not working towards enlightenment, your karma is just putting you back more and more into the cycle of birth and death. So that's really what karma is talking about. It is not this like boomerang effect that we have weirdly modernized it into. That's wishful thinking.
well, yeah, and it's funny when you get into the deeper levels of even the Judaic things, right? So it's the punishment is that you're weighed down by your karma, so you keep reincarnating, and that's bad. And the punishment, like hell, isn't a fiery place. What hell is separation from God, right? Like it isn't this like the way we picture it. It's literally just the being pulled away from creation. So they both have this type of thing of like it's you're either moving towards it as the reward or being stuck here, or you're being just pulled away into where the divine doesn't reach.
Right. Yeah. Or, if you go more philosophically about it, it's just you're not, it's a mental thing, right? You're just not happy because you refuse to find God in that way, whatever God would be in that situation. But
Well, yeah, that's the
yeah,
personal hell on earth type stuff, or
that's the
the
thing. It's a state of being, right? Back to the samurai thing. It's just how you are, not what you have done or what you will do.
which is we. I don't remember if we talked about it on one of the recordings. Wonder if that's gonna wonder if the sounds to come through. But when we
I
talked
just
about
hear a voice. I don't hear the words. So
when we talked about ugly, it was that kind of thing where it's like it's hard to tell if um, people that let themselves become corrupted can't achieve peace. Like that's the cost of it. Now, maybe some people are okay with that, but it's basically like a satisfied unpleasantness is the theory. And there seems to be a significant amount of evidence from people who have been around those types of people, from autobiographies, that they accept that fate. And that's what makes it tricky, right? Like, yes, you will be corrupted as a person, you'll be tormented. And some people jump in that like somebody would jump in an ice bath.
I'm trying to remember if Steve Jobs was that way.
Yeah, absolutely. He was miserable.
Yeah. But he like was so driven. Like he kind of ignored the misery and just ate the
Mhm.
driven part. Like I have to achieve, I have to drive, I must do this thing. And he
Mhm.
just swallowed it whole and he literally let himself die. Like because of it.
One is part of the thing about like people that get crazy rich, which is this is the thing we're talking about in the ugly episode, is like at a certain point, uh it's the curse of the uh what's the curse from the first Pirates of the Caribbean?
The Black Pearl. The curse of it's like the Aztec curse. I don't know.
Yeah, but so yeah, the curse for the crew of the Black Pearl, where it's like
Right.
eventually all the stuff just keeps losing its flavor, right? You have to keep increasing to get the dopamine, right? So it
Right.
gets harder. So you enjoy less and less and less and less. And at some point, you have to kind of peak out. Um, Other than just playing the game of power just for the sake of power, because that's the only one that maintains the novelty. All the stuff, all the food, all the riches and resources and anything money can buy. Anything money can buy outside of power will lose its thing. And even power, the only thing that makes it fun is that it keeps going, right? Like the game changes, the pieces move. Um, which is where kind of my theory is that my conspiracy is more that there's this level of people that are playing the power game because they want to, and other people just don't want all of that. And they kind of recognize all together that we're playing this game together. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to try to beat you, but we're just going to play. To them, it's just a game, right? They don't think
Mhm.
about it morally. They don't think about the damage it causes. They're just trying to keep feeling because they're at that level where that's the only thing left.
Right. And like I wonder if someone like Buffett, Warren Buffett, feels like that because he's always just been enamored with the game. But I don't know because like he just from very early on, it seems like he's always just done what he's really enjoyed, which is the investing game, right? And it is
Mhm.
a game. Let's be honest. uh, like he doesn't seem to be saddened by anything. The only thing he seems frustrated by is that um, his company, whose name escapes me all of a sudden.
Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah, that one. Thank you, Jesus. Um, it was like, I know there's an H in there somewhere, but so the only thing he seems frustrated by, at least in public, because we don't see him behind closed doors, uh, is that Berkshire Hathaway is such a big boat that he can't be nimble anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, for him, like he didn't get, from at least what I know about him, I'm sure there's anti-capitalists that would argue against it, but like he played a balanced game, right? Like he wasn't trying to take advantage of things, take advantage of people, I guess specifically, right? He was uh, capitalizing on opportunities in a condensed game. Now the companies he's investing in, sure, you could make that argument
Yeah.
easily.
It affected people for sure.
Mhm.
But
But what he was doing wasn't, because he could, the point would be like if they all decided that they were gonna make sure that they weren't doing that, it wouldn't change his game.
right, yeah. So it's just such a strange. He's an anomaly, right? Because like his decisions do affect a lot of people, and I don't know if he considers those people, but is it his job to consider those people?
He can't.
Like, yeah,
Like that's the thing with any of that stuff is you have to just be in the game, right? Like if you get out on the field and all you're doing is looking at the people in the stands, like you're gonna miss the play.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. And it's one of those things that you learn is you cannot make everyone happy. Simple as that. You just cannot. It's just not
Mhm.
possible. Which is why this question of balance is so daunting.
Uh, yeah, because you could achieve personal balance, right? So I think that's part of what we've gotten
Yeah.
across.
Yeah. And it takes defending to do that. You need a solid system in place to achieve personal balance.
And for the most part, it's boring.
That's what people don't talk about is seriously, like it's all about the achieving and the like orchestral score behind the Alan Watts talking and all that kind of stuff. Like, and all that's great. I love it, but it is definitely a distraction after a point. So much of it is just like doing the thing over and over. Like,
Well, that's the thing is when people.
have you ever listened to a musician actually practice a piece of music? Not play music, practice. It is insanity.
But no, yeah, right, that's the thing, right? Is it's one of my big tropes with the whole new age woo woo, all that type of stuff. Is it's like, oh, balance this, balance that, but then they're constantly chasing novelty, right? It's like if you had balance, you wouldn't be wearing all this funky clothes and like trying to get something.
Right.
You'd put on literally anything, and you would do. This is the part. Literally anything. You wouldn't complain about a job. You wouldn't complain about traffic. You wouldn't complain about what's going on in the world. You wouldn't give a shit like about any of that.
Yep.
So you can't be like, oh, I'm at peace, but here's a problem. That's not how it works.
Yeah. There's some folks who sell courses too, where, it's like, oh, you can make money selling real estate if you buy my course. It's like, if your course worked, you probably wouldn't be selling it, like.
Yeah. All the time. I think that all the time. My favorite is people on TikTok, like, I'll show you how to build a like social media account. They got like 100 people. It's like, really though?
Don't think you will. I think you're still figuring out how to do that. And like, everyone has to start from somewhere and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't begrudge anyone. It's just like you and I want to have a course of some kind eventually. Like, and I think that'd be great. I think what would set us apart, right, is the fact that we fully admit that we don't quite know everything. We're gonna figure it out. And that's like the course. It's we're figuring shit out. And here's how to help figure things out for yourself. And not like,
well, and we'll be pretty upfront, like us doing the course is like a self-fulfilling thing, right? Not in the way where it's like, oh, like I'm gonna teach you how to do this stuff, but they're making money from the courses. Like, no, we did this podcast, we hustled, we like put the time aside, like, and as the course gets bigger, like we get bigger, but everything we learned to put this together, everything that made it successful is like in the course, and it built up to it.
Right. So it's more of like a
it's
like
a
mentor, almost like a digital mentor of sorts.
Yeah,
because a mentor is just, here's my story. Here's what you should do from that story. Here's what you should avoid. Here are the mistakes of that story.
I'm not going to say exactly what we're doing because nobody else has quite done it yet. So I want to keep secret sauce.
Absolutely.
Okay, but so back to the Dalai Lama thing, because I made my big old like, yeah, you can't complain about the world if you have peace, which is true. But lots of people push back on that. It's like, oh no, well, like, you have to have peace, and like there's a way to have peace and all that type of stuff. There isn't. If we're talking like true balance, true peace, there isn't, because you're okay with everything as is. Doesn't mean that you won't work to change things, but none of it's a problem, right? You'll look at things and you'll be as objective as a human can be. And either there is an ideal, either there is a right, there's a progress, whatever. If there is, then you move towards that, but you're not worried about it. It's not a problem. But then probably the more true thing is there's people that find peace, realize that it disconnects them, and then move out of their peace to then tackle the problems of the world. It's one of my biggest tropes.
Matrix. The Matrix.
It's one of my biggest things. Like when I first got really into like yoga, esotericism, meditation, all that type of stuff. And people are like, oh, there's all these enlightened people. I'm like, it's real easy to find peace on a fucking mountain. Like, go in the city, like get a job, then get enlightened. Impress me.
Right. Truly. Now you do need time and space to be able to think, right? Because most of what we run into is, we're in the trenches of life. we're trying to survive, make enough money to buy food, have a house, like buy food, have shelter, have, warmth, like survival. We're on the bottom part of Maslow right now. And so many people are, especially in the US right now. So you do need to, part of the system, right, of having balance and protecting balance, having space for thinking about stuff and maintaining it mentally and spiritually.
Yeah, if we're talking like on a societal level, it's the why people, when I made the UBI video, some people like said, well, you don't need the universal basic income. What you need is, universal basic necessities. It's like, sure, like I have a hard time imagining a good way to do that without money. But technically speaking, no, you don't need that. You just need to give people food and shelter, right?
Mhm.
But I don't see how anybody can make an argument that getting everybody to the necessities met level is a bad thing. This is where it gets real conspiracy real quick, because the only benefit to having a bottom is for exploitation. Only benefit, and it
That's
comes
exactly
at
what, and that's exactly what happens. Like we want to think that it doesn't happen. We'd like it not to happen, but it happens.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's a risk. That's the point, is having that exist is a risk that it bottoms out and too many people fall in there, and then you have a revolution or revolt or whatever it is. Yeah, I can't see any good argument for not, as a community on whatever scale, getting everybody above water, floating on the water, not
Mhm.
swimming or borderline drowning. Like, it just,
Right.
the economics is very clear that it's you'll have more innovators, you have more scientists, you have more business people. Like the GDP, the economics of it works out. More people will make more money. The global economy will grow. There's no disadvantage other than certain organizations can't exploit certain demographics in certain situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And sadly, there are, we talked about sex trafficking in the last episode. And
Should be laughing. That was a terrible response, but
no, it's a response that is,
that's a hysterical response. Like, it's just
yeah,
it's
yeah,
actually
yeah.
crazy.
Hey, remember that time we talked about? Yeah. But no, I
No
bring
big
it up because we discussed this and got very angry about it. How it exists, and it's one of those, that's one of the exploitation things. So yes, the lower, people get exploited, but the thing is, they get exploited by systems that make like there are businesses for exploiting. Like the business is to exploit.
Right.
Like,
But the
yeah,
question becomes, is there an orchestrated effort to prevent people from coming out of poverty? And it seems like there has to be. Like, that's
the thing is, there is, but not from the higher powers. It's all kind of in this mid to low tier. So it's really hard because it's a bunch of crabs trying to crawl all over each other.
well, and I think it's been growing in popularity, part because of Joe Rogan, but the dispersion of power and responsibility
Mhm.
is that there's enough of it out there that they don't directly have to pay a politician. They have their money in these things. They know these people who know these people. So just by the mechanism creates that effect.
Right. Yeah, it's frustrating. I was just lamenting with a friend yesterday about how I was going over like some budget stuff, and it's like, man, we pay all these taxes, and I got nothing against that. I wish they were lower just for my own personal financial reasons, but taxes exist, and they probably should exist. But it would be really nice if we like saw a result of paying taxes. Like, we don't really see a result of paying taxes, especially as younger people. Like, I live in Milwaukee. Things are still like, the infrastructure is shit, like all the time. I don't really see my tax dollars at work.
I wrote a essay on it when I was either in high school or early college.
Mhm.
But like, it feels like there should be a portion of your taxes that the government just does whatever it wants to, whatever it thinks it needs to, because the reality is most people aren't informed enough to talk about what we do with all the money. But a chunk of your money, 50%, 30% of your taxes, you should fill out. I want this to go to the military. I want this to go to infrastructure. And you write out percentages of what you're contributing that goes only to those departments.
That's like a real democracy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also real capitalism. It's both.
Yeah. That's just it. Like, if the general populace doesn't feel like spending that much on the military, we wouldn't. Like, we would shift it somewhere else. And then the US would go, like, the government could then go, okay, well, capitalism wins out. We should make sure our military is succinct and effective, but we don't need to grow it anymore because, the populace is more into agriculture, whatever it is, We should probably feed people instead of kill them.
Well, and it holds them accountable, where it's like, okay, so you want money for the military, then you have to make a good case to people. You need to go out there, plead your case. You can't just be like, well, we're going to do it. Well, we don't want you to. Well, too bad.
Right. It does infuriate me. Like, they say the cost of one of the jets or something, could send, God, is it something like 1,000 people to college for free or something like that? Like, even more than that, if I recall. That, or we still buy tanks. We don't use tanks. We don't use tanks anymore. Like, it's a
But
lot of
other people
frivolous
use tanks.
military
We
spending.
sell tanks.
Business
Yeah.
as usual. Yeah. And that's a whole nother thing. And it's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, when it comes to the balance thing, I think it's the reality is that the ugly truth of the matter is it's about finding balance. And there's, you could probably find a balance that isn't, necessarily peace. So I guess that would be a distinction, right? Back to the like balance can like all peace is balance, but not all balance is peace.
Right.
But you can find a balance, but it basically comes down to some level of acceptance. I feel like that's the key thing in any human experience of balance. Though we're not talking cosmic balance and physics and whatever, but within the human experience, balance fundamentally comes from acceptance, putting yourself in the middle, seeing both sides and letting them weigh themselves out.
Yep. And it's, you make choices, you have to sit with those choices or defend them, or if you change your mind, that's another choice that you must then follow through. It's a whole thing. And part of balance is riding out the consequences. I would argue. Yeah. And we really do want to make sure we're talking about the human experience of balance, because cosmically, George Carlin probably said it best: the Earth is fine, humans are fucked.
Yeah. That's back to the, like, if we're going on that scale, it all has to be good. Or religions are right, but that's a conversation. Oh, and only the religions that think that there's evil, not the religions that are unifying and the fact that all is emanated from the divine. So again, all is good. Most of the theories of the universe, even religious, is that the universe itself is all good. The problems happen with people.
Absolutely.
And it's not that the problems happen, it's that people perceive problems, which gets real touchy because things suck, tragedies happen, atrocities happen. And those all need to be addressed within the human sphere, which is I really hope I can bring Jacob, if you see this, I want to bring you on, because it's one of my favorite things, one of my favorite philosophical tools for seeing where somebody was at, like in their intellectual level of philosophy, was to like tell me what the difference is between you and insert inanimate object here. And my like linchpin was always just, you're just a bunch of atoms. So yeah, well, I'm a special set of atoms. Says who? You? That specific set? You dictate to yourself? It's the brain saying it's the most important organ, right? It's like, where's your like authority? Where's the thing that's allowing you to dictate that? And they would be, they would either just revert to insults, or they would keep getting stuck in circles where I could just chop it down. And my friend Jacob is like, he's like, yeah, that's That's true. I'm a human. It's entirely arbitrary, but I am human. So I'm going to value the human experience, focus on human concerns. Is it true? I don't know. And I don't care. I'm human. I'm going to do human things for human people. I was like, that's the
Yeah.
answer.
I read that in a I'm reading or listening to the entirety of the Conan the Barbarian series written in the 30s, like the original sword and sorcery type stuff. And Conan is like that. He waxes in a highly un-Conan like, because he's a barbarian. um point of philosophy. He's like, I've heard the priests talk about, the divine and life being an illusion and all that stuff. I don't know a lot about that. He goes all Forrest Gump for a second. He's like, I don't know much about that. But what I do know is that if everything's an illusion, I am also an illusion. So I'm just going to go experience this whole illusion. Like,
Yeah, when people get hung up on the like simulation thing, it's like
Yeah.
one, it's a matter of statistics. It's just a funny little game, right? That like something eventually has to be a simulation. Could be this, might not be, but
we're
something.
making one.
Yeah.
They're making one right now.
But it's like if it is or isn't, it changes nothing.
That's a big one that I really like to try and remember. It's like, hey, it's not like, does it matter really? Like,
It does in the like spiritual sense of enlightenment and ascendancy, right? Like if you're trying to get out of the game, okay, that's relevant. Figuring out how to really get out of the game is important. But unless your sole goal is to stop playing the game, you need to start playing the game, enjoying the game,
right. Yeah.
or not enjoying it. I mean, it's your game. You play it how you want.
Right.
Rage quit. Don't rage quit because that could be metaphorically really bad.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. There's people to talk to about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep playing. My theory on the rage quitting thing is you started playing the game, just find a way to make it through.
Right.
I've had that struggle myself, weighed the options. My dumb thing is I wouldn't be here if there wasn't a point to being here. It's like, oh, well, is there some philosophical point? No, not necessarily. Just I'm here. I'm just going to keep doing until I can't.
Right.
Good, bad, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just keep moving.
I read a whole book on grit. Angela Duckworth is the author. I don't remember most of the book, but I do remember this one line. The rule is you can't quit on a bad day. That's it. That's it.
You shouldn't make any decision in a bad mood on a bad day.
Yep. And then the other one is a musician who I really look up to. He's a kind of a world-renowned trombone player, which, very small sphere, but overall, he's very smart. He's a great artist. Doesn't matter. He could pick up any instrument and like he'd be an artist, just so happens he plays mine. But he talks about performing well and poorly. And it's like when we perform poorly, we tend to analyze and like pick it apart and do all this and really just dive into it and all the whys and whats and what ifs and all that kind of stuff. When we perform well, we go have a beer. Should be the other way around. If you're really trying to develop yourself, it should be the other way around. If you perform poorly, it might be worth thinking about, but not in that mood, like not in that like down small feeling kind of thing. That's not going to be very useful. So go have a beer. Just I'm gonna have a beer. And when you do well, then pick it apart. Enjoy it, right? Enjoy the feeling of that, but like pick apart why you do well, because you need to do more of that.
or find where the bad things are in the well, right? So it's like, okay, don't touch the parts that are working, find the little things that aren't. And when the whole thing falls down, like leave it, like come back, clean it up, and then take a fresh approach.
Yeah. And once you set it up, or once you're setting it up, and a little bit of it wobbles, you go, okay, what's wobbling? That's fine. Cool.
Yep.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole thing. And that is part of finding balance, right? Don't fix what ain't broken. You can enhance and augment, sure, but don't treat things like they're broken all the time. I think that's a weird thing that we've gotten into culturally, of everything is not good enough.
It's not perfect, so everything's wrong.
Right. Yeah. And that is psychologically and spiritually damaging.
That's why everyone talks about Pinkerton. It's all over the place. Where it's like we are doing objectively better everywhere for everyone.
Yeah.
Better doesn't mean everyone's doing as well, as good, great, perfect, whatever. But in general, across the
Absolutely.
numbers, and yeah, because I think it's the trouble is if you energy was it energy goes where was it where focus goes, energy flows. There we go. Um, so the trouble with just focusing on problems is you're just focusing on problems.
That's all you see. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Uh, there's an Uncle Iroh quote in there somewhere. I'm blanking on it right now. There is. He's got a lot of good ones.
Well,
He
yeah.
has. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, no, I mean, to do the Uncle Iroh concept, it's to tie in the music thing, to tie in the skills, to tie in life as an art and a skill set. It's the fundamentals. Learn to wake up well, learn to go through your day well, learn to go to bed well. What you do in between is not nearly as important as just getting from wake up, have a day, go to bed well.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really like, the rule of three, the trios has been a thing throughout all of history. There's the Holy Trinity, all that kind of stuff. But um, three is big in Nordic and Celtic mythologies and thought patterns and all that stuff as well. Um, but there's a fitness YouTuber that I really got into years ago because he does anime fitness, so he's really fun.
Mm,
Yeah, and he has a lot of really great videos and a lot of really like simplistic, realistic things. Uh, and one of them he calls it the three-legged stool, so a stool with three legs, the three-legged stool of fitness. So you need what is it? Nutrition, uh, physical activity, and I think rest is the other one, or like
mhm.
recovery.
Yeah.
But it really most things are in threes for whatever reason. Take care of those three things and you'll be all right. Life in general, we usually do, what is it? Mind, body,
Spirit.
spirit. Yeah, it's something along those three lines. Yeah.
Mm.
If you address all three of those, in rotation, or just keep it all as like a bubbling pot where it all kind of rises together, like you'll do okay.
Yeah. So maybe okay, let's try and put a bow on this. Maybe the way to achieve balance is to focus on the simplicities.
Mhm. You talk about this all the time. Changing the world starts with changing what's immediately around.
Mhm. But and this is where it gets tough. We want to change. We do the same kind of goal thing, right? Where it's like, I want to change that thing. It's like, no, 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 just change you, right? Change who you are in regards to I'm the kind of person that blank.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is
Absolutely.
easier to do with simple principles, right? So it's I'm the kind of person that goes the extra mile, whatever it is, right? You make them simple and you make it, take an abstract, make it simple, and then it applies to all the situations. So you don't have to worry about, okay, I need to be good at this and this and this and this. It's like, no, I just always do this, and it automatically takes care of those.
Hmm.
Make the
Absolutely.
path, make the path shorter. You don't need to
Mhm.
wander through the forest.
No, it's true. It's true. There's
You
plenty
you
on
don't
that path.
you don't need to wander through the forest if you're trying to go somewhere. If you want to wander, fine, wander. But if you're trying to get somewhere, find a path, keep it simple.
Hmm. Yeah, exploration is wonderful and great, but that is a choice you make, right? It's like, I'm going to go exploring and I will find Antarctica. It's like, well, maybe.
Yeah. I'm gonna go that way.
Right, right. Well, follow that trail. Follow that trail. Oh, Road to El Dorado. Great movie. You fight like my sister. I've fought your sister. That's a compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think because when you, I guess because the thing is that when you're trying to balance too much, it's harder to balance, right? So that's the thing is you need to balance less to balance
The
better.
irony of it all, if you try to balance too much, you're out of balance.
Yeah, yeah. Keep less to balance. You'll balance better.
It's simple, but not easy. Like most
Yeah.
things.
Don't know why that has to be a truism.
Honestly, like it is almost infuriating how good of a book Atomic Habits is because it just applies to everything.
Yeah, started
It
having
really is. It really is a blueprint to how you can apply helping yourself, like how you can apply a lot of these things in reasonable, doable, small doses to achieve, the bigger effects. But like the bigger effects are simply a result, not a destination.
Mhm.
Like if I just go that way, one step at a time, like if you just watch your feet walk, you will eventually get somewhere. Like
Well, I think if people thought of results as plants more than anything, it's like it's simple to keep a plant alive. Make sure it's got good soil, sunlight, water. You do that in the wrong combination, you'll kill it. But it's simple. Just focus on how much water does it need, how much soil does it need, and how much sun does it need.
right.
Again, doesn't mean it's easy, but if you narrow the focus, it's a lot easier to do versus you're like, oh, like I don't know, I'm trying to water it. And if you're just trying to watch what the plant's doing versus learning the skill of good watering, learning this like getting to know it, to get that intimacy. It's
Mhm.
with all the arts, right? Like with being a musician, that's the big thing, right? Same thing with martial arts. Um, it's the basics, which is where the Iroh thing comes in, right?
Yep.
Remember your basics, Zuko, because like that
Right.
a master is a master of the basics. People think that masters are doing advanced techniques, but they're not. What they're really good at is the fundamentals that allows them the fluidity to do the advanced things.
Yeah, there's so much of that. YouTube is such a great resource because you can see a lot of interviews with masters of things, of
Mhm.
various things. I watch a lot on musicians, obviously. So many of them, and it's becoming more prevalent now that there's a shift in culture where the masters are now talking about how they became masters. They don't have to defend their reputation so much as a
Right.
master. Because before, I read a book on memorizing music, being able to perform memorized pieces, like long ones too. And it was written by this pianist and a couple of psychologists. And they talk about how they interviewed different concert pianists, so people who travel the world playing piano solos in front of orchestras. And so many of them were very defensive about how they memorized their stuff because it was more important that their reputation was, oh, they're just a genius. They can just play it and they're so like it comes from nowhere. Like, well, no, there's a process involved.
Well, that's the thing with
Like,
all back to the courses and to start wrapping this up. It's like, okay,
yeah,
it's simple. It's like, oh well, you want to know my story? You want to know what their story is? They got up, they did it.
yep.
The end.
And they fucked up a bunch. They fucked up a whole bunch.
Right. Okay, if they got up, they did it, didn't work, kept doing it, and then it worked.
Yep.
But
Yep.
There you go. I've done all of your favorite entrepreneurs biographies, all your favorite business books. It's get up, do it, fail, do it again until you get it right. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's your holy grail.
Yep. Yep. Or discover something else that you like. I failed that, but in failing that, I actually discovered this thing. So that's cool. Let's do that for
Right.
a while.
Which is why the formula is get up and do.
Yep, that's actually one thing I was going to talk about in this book, and we'll wrap up. But they talk about how the head of the family was like, it's all parables. So my father, blah blah blah, once told me that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
he said, yeah, us, we, leave knowledge hoarding and learning and all that stuff to the scholars in their, in the court. Once we read a book, we burn it. Because they are doers. There's knowers and there's doers.
Mhm.
And they're talking, this whole book is mostly about being a doer, not achieving, not like setting goals and, you have to always be, that kind of stuff. It's just, no, we do. We don't think too hard about it. We just get up and do. We are. That is who we are. We are people who do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yep. And that is the whole Teddy Roosevelt thing of, don't bash the gladiator in the arena if you're sitting on your ass.
I was trying to find a clever way to make doing and balance go together, but I think those are distinctly different topics.
Well, balancing is, we talked about the noun, but to balance is a verb as well. I think
Well,
that,
and it's the ironic, it's the stir concept is just focus on your doing. The balance will work itself out. The universe is balanced. You're the one that's not seeing balance. So if you just stop focusing on it and just do your thing, your way, the best you can, you'll find the balance because nature will move you into that because it has to. That's how it works.
you are the universe experiencing itself.
So this is two thinkers saying stop thinking, start doing.
Call me out like that.
Note to self.
I have so many of those notes to myself.
All right, cool. I guess that's a wrap, y'all.
Yeah.
Eh,